Let's talk about sketchbooks, particularly this Copic paper selections one. If you watched my previous sketchbook tour videos from a couple weeks back, you'll know that I was in the market for a book that can handle alcohol markers. And I got a couple of really cool recommendations from you guys that I'll have to check out, but I had already bought this. There are a lot of really cool things about this book that I really dig, but there are also a couple of things that I don't. And there's one that's potentially a deal breaker. While working on the sketch, I'll do a mini review and let you know how I feel about this book and how it holds up to the Moleskine art series I previously used. But before we get into that, if you missed the sketch video, let's go down to the desk for recap. This building is stunning, but I have no idea what it's called. It's in the King West neighborhood of Toronto, and I just refer to the frames buildings for, well, the frames on the building. I took this photo back in 2017, so I had to look up the building to see if it's still standing. And to my surprise, it's not a condo. That's always amazing to see. I was much looser with the line work in this sketch. That's mostly because, other than wooden window frames, it's a fairly boring building. It's just a white box, so having a looser line work gave it a little bit of life. For the most part, the colors were dabbed and layered, because they were mostly secondary to a monochrome scene. I didn't find the Poscas very effective this time. It may be because the black marker is too saturated, or it just doesn't sit well with the sketch pad. All in all, I dig how this sketch came out, but we still have some work to do. As you probably guessed, this will all be about adding contrast. So the first thing I want to do is add a little bit more separation between the building and the sidewalk here, and I think after that I will deal with the storefront and the little logo. I want to add more contrast, so I'm probably going to make that black and see what that looks like. The next thing I'll do is try to bring back some details in these windows. Add a little bit of white around the frame, add a little bit more details on this side because they were left out of the original drawing. Bring them back a little bit more, just give it a little bit more life, I think. Another thing I want to do is try to bring back this door here. I have this fat Posca that I used in a previous video. It's kind of like a whiteout. So I'm going to overlay it a little bit and then hopefully I can bring back some details. And the last thing I want to do is frame the building a little bit. In the photo you saw before, you saw that there was another building here, but obviously I don't want to bring that in because it'll be way too distracting. So I'll just add some impressions of whatever is going on. Instead of going in and adding a black line right away, I just want to use a darker marker to add a little bit more contrast here. Add that separation. I could easily go in with the pen or the black marker and just add like a straight line with the pen, but I think it'll look nicer if I just use the markers to add it. I want to add back some shadows here. Now that the Copics have dried, it's so much easier to apply. And I hope that translates over to when I'm using the Posca also. I'm going to use the fine tip here. I rarely use this fine tip, but I just want to make this logo dark. And hopefully I can go back in a few minutes with the Posca and add some highlights to it so it looks more like letters. Before I add the Poscas, I kind of want to talk about these books for a second. So this is the Copic book, which I presume would be great for Copic markers. But there are a couple things I don't like about it. So let's start with what I do like about it. I think the pen looks great on it. It's so saturated, whereas this is the previous book I used. This was the Moleskine art series. I always struggled with the fountain pen to make it really stick. I found in the first goes it was really hard. It was very inconsistent lining, and I'd have to go back in with the marker sometimes to really darken it up. But the thing I like with the Copic one is this is dark from the get-go. So I guess I lose a little bit of weight when I'm drawing, but I prefer the consistency of it. The other thing I really like about it is that the markers look great on it. And I mean, you'd expect that from a Copic branded book using Copic markers. And I think they're pretty on par with what I was getting in the Moleskine too. Look how rich these greens are here. Look how rich this blue is, the green in there. It looks great. Another thing I like about this, and this is specifically because I sketch for YouTube, is spiral binding. So I can make it flat. It takes up a lot less footprint than this book, for instance, where it took up a lot more space, and I also had to keep the pages down when I was drawing. If you looked at a lot of my old videos, you'd see my hand here very tense, and then I'd have it also over here to really sketch, and I don't think it looked good at all. But with this one, everything's flat. I'm sure I'll have some issues with the pages down the line, but who knows? As of right now, I dig it. Let me talk about what I don't like. The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I'm about to use the Posca pens, and you can see from before when I used it, they didn't really stick. So I don't like that the Poscas don't stick on them. And it's the same exact issue I had with the Moleskine, where I had to really go in hard afterwards to get the Poscas to stick. I had to wait till it dried fully, and then sometimes it still didn't stick. I don't know if you remember the after sketch for Olivia's Garden, or even this last one I did, where you can even see it here. the Poscas weren't really sticking to the black marker. They were kind of getting absorbed into the paper. I guess that comes with a high absorption paper, but I'm having the same issues with this one. So this one's actually quite annoying because this is a Copic book made for Copic markers, but it bleeds. It bleeds. Look at this. This is ridiculous. It's the same exact issue I had with the Moleskine. It would bleed. It'd bleed a couple pages. And this is the same exact thing. So this is the sketch I did. It bled onto this page here. And then even on the other side, it bled over here. I find that absolutely ridiculous because it's a Copic branded sketchbook. So you'd presume that you'd be able to use Copic markers and it'd be completely fine. I'll keep giving it a go. I think because it's spiral bound and it's flat, I can always insert a sheet back here so it doesn't bleed over multiple pages. Obviously, it will continue to bleed through this page. But since it's also spiral, I don't have to worry about a dirty left page, which was a big issue in the early days of this book here. Because look at this. It bled through this and it bled through here. And when I drew this sketch, this was all here too. So at least the spiral binding gives me the flexibility to not have to worry about what's happening on this page. With that said, let me go back and add the Poscas. Hopefully they stick this time because it's been about an hour and a half, even probably closer to 2 hours since I finished this drawing. There's no reason why it shouldn't stick. I'm gonna go in and do the windows first because the markers have already dried. I'm not gonna touch that until the end because I just applied that. So hopefully, let's see how this works. Oh, it's a little bit better. That's good. I'm gonna add a little bit of details in here. It's actually sticking quite well. I do enjoy this now. Let's see how it works here because I really want to make these white. Oh. It's getting pulled in, the black marker. And I think once I finish doing these window frames, I might go back in with the pen and re-add the black. Just gave it a little reshake just now and it's applying a little bit better. You know what? Let's just go in. It's just dots, right? That looks okay. While I'm here, I'm going to use the fat Posca. This is the PC3M. It has a medium bullet-shaped nib. I'm going to use that to push back the details in the doors and perhaps bring a little bit more structure. That's looking pretty good. What this will allow me to do is to come back with the pen and redraw some of these lines to make it look a little bit better. And just the act of using the Posca acrylic here will give it a little bit of tone. So I'll let that dry before coming back in with the detail. This was the last thing I wanted to do, but it'll be the second to last thing I want to do just because I'm waiting for these areas to dry a little bit before I go back in with the pen. So I just want to add a little impression of the buildings on this side here and this side here. For that, I'll use my light brown marker and go in a little bit. I'm trying to see how this will look. Yeah, let's do it. You know what? Make it a little bit wider. Go up further. Oh, that's cool. And I'll use the purple marker on this side over here. Essentially doing the same thing, but just smaller. There you go. That gave it a little bit of life. And hopefully in that time, the Poscas had had a chance to dry. It really wasn't a big difference, but I want to take away some of the details so I can redraw it and have it look a little bit more structured. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go back in with the blacks and just re-add this. because after all, it's all about contrast, right? Contrast is everything. And because I'm too lazy to pick up the pen again, I'm just gonna add this in here. And the darker the markers are, the more I like to add dots rather than just doing a straight line because it's so stark. You want to add the impressions of the shadows, those dark shadows. You don't want to make the whole thing black. It might seem counterintuitive for me to put in the whites just so I can re-add black, but this is no different than painting. It's all about layering. Let's add some dots to show an impression of maybe there's something beyond those doors there. And that's it. I like how this came out. I'm probably going to keep using this book just because I like the spiral bound, and I think this one's a little bit easier to add a backing sheet so it doesn't go through to this page here. So, and I can flip this one behind and then I just have a fresh page. So I'm going to keep using this one. I mean, I have however many pages here to use, so I'll definitely do it. I'm not going to waste this book at all. And I guess I hope I get better at it. And I find ways of dealing with how it reacts to the markers and how it picks up the Poscas. I think adding the impressions of the structures to either side of the building really did a great job of framing it and adding context. The Poscas worked pretty decently on the dried markers, but I would still prefer something a little bit more opaque. All in all, this was a fairly quick touch-up, so there are no major changes, but I'm still happy with how it came out. I just can't believe that this book bleeds, but I'm not going to give up on it. Would I recommend the sketchbook for people using Copics? The bits I like are brilliant, and while it's probably not going to be my day-to-day sketchbook, I'll keep using it for filming. So I guess that's a non-recommendation recommendation. I'll put the call out again. What are some sketchbooks you use? Let me know down in the comments. I've also added some links to the supplies I use in this and previous videos. Do you want to see an in-depth look at my previous sketchbook, the moleskin that I discussed earlier? That video should pop up now, along with a playlist of previous sketches. Check them out, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't.